I wanted to welcome you all to another Outstanding Authors at Google Talk. I can only do very little in terms of introduction here. The true expert is fellow Googler Stephanie McClellan, but she did give me a few pointers as we introduce our latest speaker today. So Michael Romano is here speaking about his book, which is called The Family Table. It's a story of chef and staff meals at the Union Square Cafe, which is where he is the culinary director. And this James Beard-winning, massively awesome restaurant, massively awesome staff, really, takes the concept of enlightened hospitality to heart. And so, that's truly apparent in the staff meal, which is in essence, what you feed the folks that are on staff for you. Very similar to how we approach, life at Google. And so we will have some time for questions at the end. And for now, please join me in welcoming Michael to Google. Thank you very much.
I have a copy. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I'll refer to this. Hi. Thank you for coming. Very excited to be here. Great to see Stephanie up on the screen. So it's actually, I don't know, it's a little embarrassing coming here to talk to you about staff meal because you have the most amazing facility here. I just got a tour. I just had a wonderful lunch at Long Life, was it? Long Life Cafe. And I'm very jealous. You have the most incredible food facility I've ever seen. And I was at the New York Google office, and that was pretty spectacular. But this is amazing. So, very excited about our new book. This is my third cookbook. The first two are the Union Square Cafe Cookbook, and the second one was called Second Helpings from Union Square Cafe. Kind of turned out to be a bad name because people thought it was a book about leftovers, but it's not. And they've done very well, but this one is very exciting. I don't know if any of you are authors or have written a book or anything, but you work very hard at it, sometimes for years, and then it gets processed and put together and published, and the moment when they put it in your hands is a really amazing moment. It's like welcoming a newborn into the world, and it's just very exciting because you never know really what it's going to look like until there it is, in your hand. So the idea for this book, Family Table, is every day in our restaurants, twice a day, the staff, which is always referred to as family, by the way. The cooks don't say I'm making staff meal. They'll always say, who's making family today? It's just a tradition in our business. And every day they sit down to a meal at lunch and dinner. And so we thought that in itself would be an interesting topic for a book. What is the food that is being prepared for these people? And it's not the food that we are preparing for you, the guests who come to our restaurants. Quite different. And then there was another thought that entered into this, which really convinced us that we should do this book. And I say we, this is my co-author, Karen Stabiner, was all the stories about the folks who work in our restaurants. And we have over 2,000 employees, which I know here seems like nothing, but for us it's pretty amazing. And so all the people, and some of them have been with us for over 20 years, because our oldest restaurant, the Union Square Cafe, where I started as executive chef, is going to be 28 years old this October. So we have people who have been with us for a really long time, and what happens, of course, is they develop a kind of a connection to the place that goes beyond if you're there for a year or two. They have they're connected to the history of the place. They carry it around with them, and they teach this. They are the keepers of the history and the everything that goes into making our places, and they teach this to the young people coming in, the new people coming into our restaurants. So we thought, well, now that also would be an interesting topic to put together in a book along with the recipes. So that's essentially what we've done. We've got great recipes, and we've got great stories about the folks who populate our restaurants and make them, alive. They bring the spirit, the soul to the restaurants. And without that, a restaurant is not really terribly interesting, or it won't ever be great if it doesn't have that soul. So what's interesting about the recipes, I think, is that so you have these cooks, right? And has anyone here ever worked in a restaurant? Wow, see that? There's a few. the cook will be assigned to do family. And he or she will have certain parameters. They'll be very pressed for time. That's always a given, because they have their own work to do. It's not like it's a dedicated cafeteria where they're just doing food for staff. They have to do their other work as well. So they'll have a very limited time. They'll have a definite parameters as to what they're going to use for the food. We don't want to ever see truffles going out to the dining room for the staff or things like that. But so they have to make quick decisions, work quickly, and come up with tasty food kind of in a hurry. And I find that has a tremendous synergy with someone cooking at home for a family, because you probably face the same kinds of constraints, and the parameters are about the same. So we hope that is going to be an enticement to folks cooking at home, because they'll see recipes here that can be done pretty quickly. They're very tasty, and not going to tax your pocketbook too much, but you're going to enjoy them, and they're going to broaden your repertoire of things that you can cook at home. The other thing is something that I hadn't really planned on when we started the book was the racial ethnicity across this book is pretty amazing. Because the cooks are cooking, wherever they've come from. If they're Dominican or Mexican or Asian, they bring the food that they know and love to the table. And so we have a great diversity in the book of different recipes and different flavors, which I think is really a lot of fun. And I also I'm also hoping something for this book. This is a little deeper, a little bit of a long-term hope. But I know that out there in the certainly in the television world, there's a kind of a notion that persists, and that I guess because it makes good television, that restaurants are places where there's a lot of screaming going on, and people are really getting sort of emotionally beat up and put down, and that kind of persists throughout our industry. And I'm hoping that this book will just, make a little dent in that perception, because it shows how well people can be treated. And we don't do all that stuff, and I never did that as a chef. And so I want people to see a different side of the restaurant business. So to me, there's two. People have asked me, well, why is staff meal, why is family table so important? And I tell them for two reasons. One is physiological, meaning that you need to be nourished. If you're working in a kitchen or dining room, it's difficult work, it's challenging work. You're on your feet for long hours, and if you're in the dining room, you're facing guests, and you always have to bring a level of hospitality, of sort of upbeat energy to it. So if you're not fed, and you're thinking about how hungry you are, and you're around all this food, and you're serving this food, you're going to be distracted. And you're going to be serving someone their chicken, and you're going to be thinking, I wish I had a piece of that chicken. I want to take a little piece right off that plate and eat it, and your mind is going to be not focused so much on what you're supposed to be doing. And at the most basic level, you need the energy to be able to carry on and do the job. So that's number one. Number two is the psychological aspect to it, which is cooking good food and serving good food. And again, you folks know this very well here, is a way of taking care of people. And when you take care of people in that way, people feel taken care of, and they appreciate it, and they have a reciprocal kind of experience where they feel good about the place they're working in. And this is a great example of it. So in the folks in our restaurants, if they're well taken care of that way, they're fed, and also they feel this place cares about me. They care enough to serve food. I know at one of our restaurants, Gramercy Tavern, it was our second one to open in 1994. I'm always amazed at how carefully the food that goes out for a family is labeled with a lot of details about what's in the food, so that someone who doesn't want to eat pork or doesn't want to eat gluten or things like that will know ahead of time. And believe me, that is not the norm in the restaurant business. Often in the restaurant business, it's if you get a meal, it's like, here it is, and if you don't like it, too bad. And you can just go out and fend for yourself. So I'm really happy and proud to see that kind of thing go on. And Gramercy was a big contributor in this book, and they did it really, really joyfully and willingly, and they were very proud of the book itself. So yeah, that was really a great aspect to it. We also have, I noticed after the book came out, and I showed it around to people who contributed the recipes, they were very proud and they were just delighted, and they couldn't wait to get a copy and take it home and show their families that they were in this book. And there's many pictures of the staff, and they were proud that they had contributed to the book. From my perspective, I mentioned before that I have already done two cookbooks. A big challenge of this book, which made it, in a way, the most difficult book I've done, was that in my first two books, the Union Square Cafe books, the recipes that you find in there are my recipes that I mostly created myself and was cooking at the restaurant. And so they were road tested, so to speak. They were broken in. We knew people liked them. So really the challenge for the book was just to get them from restaurant quantities and restaurant technique to work well for the home cook. And that's not all that difficult. So it was a great, it was an exercise in transcribing these recipes for the home cook. This book, these are not my recipes. These are the recipes that the cooks in our restaurants put together every day for the family. So the job became getting with them, when trying not to upset their routine and their schedule too much, but trying to extract from them what it was they were making. And believe me, they were not using recipes. They were not putting a teaspoon of this and a cup of that. They were just throwing stuff together, literally, and coming up with some good tasting food, but as we say, on the fly. And so Karen Stabiner, my co-author, did a lot of the legwork of getting in there and trying to pull out from the cooks what it is they were doing. And believe me, they were sometimes wildly inaccurate. A cook might say, yeah, I put about a cup of that in there, and really it was a tablespoon, So then when I got the first draft kind of raw recipe handed to me and set about testing them in the kitchen, because we want to make sure that they work, I was getting some wild results, like, oh, this is not going to work. It just wasn't right. And I knew what had been served was good. So I had to bridge that gap between what had been served and what I saw on the page, and make them sort of come together. And sometimes I exercised a little bit of executive privilege and tweaked it here and there so that I knew that this was going to be a good recipe. Sometimes I thought, well, you know what, this needs a little bit of this, so I didn't hesitate to add it, because it's all in the spirit of the family table. And I'm proud of the recipes, and I think they came out well, and I think you're going to enjoy them. How many of you actually cook at home? Oh, almost everybody. That's great. I got the right audience here. This is good. So I'm going to tell you in a very unobjective, very subjective way, my favorite recipe, because I get asked that a lot in the book, is my mother's lasagna. Now, you wonder why my mother's lasagna is in this book, because it's not something we might serve to the family in our restaurants. There's a category of recipes in here that came from the chefs. Now, the chefs in restaurants don't cook family meal. They're busy doing other things, and they assign it to the cooks, the line cooks. So we thought, well, we'd like to include them in there because they probably have some really great recipes. So we asked the chefs to contribute recipes that they might cook at home for their families, or had been cooked for them when they were growing up by their family. And that's how we got these group of recipes in here. And that's how my mother's lasagna wound up in here, because that's for me, the number one memory of childhood. It was always a very special time when she made it. She didn't make it that often, but because it's a fair amount of work. But when she did, my sister and I were always delighted, and it was always so wonderful. And so I had to go back and research and find how she did it, what ingredients and what proportions she used. And my brother-in-law helped a lot because he's a great cook, and he used to watch my mother. She's no longer alive, but thank God he noted down what she used to do. And so we pieced it together, and it came out really well. And if you make it, I promise you're going to enjoy it. And one of the things she did was to make her meatballs were really wonderful. So she would make the meatballs, cook the meatballs in the sauce, and then actually slice them and lay them out shingled as a layer, the meat layer in the lasagna. So instead of just having a sort of like a sloppy Joe kind of ground meat in there, these were seasoned, held together, beautiful, and they're very tender. You'll see if you make the recipe. They're very intentionally very soft, so that when you eat it in the lasagna, it's just this whole sort of amalgam of. And then the cheese layer is really wonderful, so it all works together. We had a book party for press in New York just before the book came out, and that was one of the dishes I served. And nobody wanted to leave until it was all gone, the lasagna. And I got a lot of great comments, which was very gratifying. And there's a number of other recipes that I really love. There's one called Dominican Beef. So-called because the fellow who makes it, Victor, is from the Dominican Republic, and he started as a porter, that is to say, would be receiving deliveries and keeping the basement in order, and then he graduated to a prep cook, and occasionally he would make this wonderful beef stew, essentially. It's very simple, it's a handful of ingredients, but it's so delicious, and some magic happens when he makes it, and I would always look forward to the days when he made that. And now the current chef at Union Square Cafe, Carmen Quagliata, actually put the dish on the brunch menu. So there's an example of a dish that did make it to the guest, and we're very proud of it. And Victor is, just overjoyed with having his recipe not only in the book but in the on the menu as well. So, and the photography is a fellow named Marcus Nielsen. I think he's from Finland. Very interesting guy. Did some wonderful photography. It's a little edgy. It's got a lot of them have sort of black background, and I love the way things came out. Everything is very unstaged in a way, and especially the shots of the people who made the food. The people. I hope that you can get a sense of the people's personality through the profiles that are written in the book, and then see through the food that they contributed a little bit of that personality come through. Because it's for me it's really clear, because I know these people. But it's a fun part of the book. I have a long memories of staff meals, family meals. Back to the 70s when I was working in Europe and France and Switzerland, and where I first saw this kind of institution of the staff sitting down. Although in France, we never, and in Switzerland as well, we never ate together with the dining room. The kitchen ate separately from the dining room. And that was something I wasn't too fond of. And when I came to Union Square Cafe in 1988, I wanted everybody to eat together, and that's what we still do in the main dining room. Everyone sits. The cooks will still sit together with other cooks because they want to talk about things, and the servers will sit with themselves. And Union Square Cafe in particular, there are staff members, that being the oldest of our restaurants, who have been there for such a long time that they have their seats, and that's where they sit for family meal. And the new person is quickly informed, you don't sit there. That's so-and-so's seat. And but it's a very benign way. It's just people get very comfortable, and it feels like they're home because they're made to feel so comfortable and taken care of, which is, again, clearly something that's going on here in an amazing way. You have so many things here that can help you get things done that you need to get done. I'm seeing laundry rooms. I'm seeing all kinds of, it's just astounding. So you understand that concept very well, and taken it to a much greater degree. But our family table is our attempt at doing that. And I was talking to my partner Danny Meyer before leaving on the book tour, and he said maybe there are always certain criteria, and these they kind of change. They're kind of topical, and the criteria by which people judge or prejudge a restaurant. From what they've heard about these days, it would be, do they practice sustainable cooking? Is it organic cooking? Is it farm to table? Is it seasonal? Is it these kinds of parameters? And he said maybe, just maybe, people will start to think about, I wonder how they treat their staff in terms of the staff meal. Because by and large, people don't think about that when they go to a restaurant. What does the staff eat? I don't know if it occurs to them that the staff eats as well, but and that's part of a bigger picture, I think, of the question of how well is the staff treated, because I go back to the days in Europe, and I won't mention names of places, but it was not always the rule. We were treated kind of harshly. It was not uncommon in the kitchen, for example, certainly be screamed at and to be even hit physically or have things thrown at you and whatnot. And the dining room also was kept on a very tight, very short leash, so to speak, and then you're expected to turn around and be genuinely kind and hospitable to the guests, which I always find to be a very difficult maneuver because it seems to me, and again, this is why it kind of bothers me to see this prolonging of this idea of the chef as screamer, someone who just wants to vent on the staff and belittle people. Picture if you're in a restaurant, you're a guest in a restaurant, and you looking at the menu and you see something you like, but you don't necessarily want it the way it's written on the menu. I'd like the roast chicken, but could I get it with the garnish that's with the steak here? And so you're going to ask your server, right? So imagine two scenarios. If your server knows that when he or she goes back into the kitchen and asks the chef, she's going to get her head chopped off. She's going to get screamed at and, really get a hassle from the chef. How is she going to react to you with your request? She's probably some part of her is going to cringe and be saying, I wish you hadn't asked me that. But on the other hand, the other scenario, if the chef is also genuinely hospitable and kind and says, sure, yeah, we'll make that work, no problem, she's going to have, or he's going to have, a much more open spirit and be much more accessible to you as the guest and give you better hospitality. And one of the most wonderful things I've ever heard my partner Danny Meyer, describing the difference between service and hospitality. He says service is a technique. It's something that happens. It's a one-way street. It happens to you as the guest. How well your plate is presented, how well your plate is cleared away, how well the wine is poured, have you got the right cutlery. That's the service. Hospitality is a dialogue. It has to happen between you and what you want and what you need and the server, who has to be listening, so that he or she understands what you as a guest need. We have an idea how we're going to present our product to you, but you are going to have ways that you want to modify that, either subtle ways or not so subtle ways. And we have to be open to hearing that and engaging you and finding a way to make that happen. And then you're going to be happy. You're going to be comfortable. I think here, what I see around here is a real dialogue of what do you need in terms of you being in this workplace to be productive, to be happy, and therefore more productive. And there's a lot of effort made to provide that for you. So it's the same kind of hospitality that we're talking about.
It's just an interesting idea to think of all the chefs at some of these really amazing restaurants just sitting around having dinner, and I'd be terrified to cook for them all. Is there like a hands-off policy? You're not allowed to critique family dinner, or like
no.
When they serve it, is it kind of like all hands on deck critiquing it? Or I just would be terrified to serve. You're talking about they have like a little bit of time. They're not as experienced as the other chefs. Like, I would think that would be kind of a terrifying experience.
It could be for a new person maybe, but I think it's an opportunity for that person to step up and show what they can do, because this is not something, they have the chef has a menu, and the cooks prepare the menu according to the chef's wishes of how it should be done. So there's not too much room for personal interpretation there. Sometimes you'll get in trouble if you do that. But for a cooking family meal, you do have room to interpret. So it's a chance for you to speak. I mean, if you're a timid person, then yeah, you might be a little nervous about it. As far as feedback, people will give feedback, hopefully in a kind way and not sort of a destructive way. But if things, and it's not about, I thought this needed a little bit more salt, or you should have put a little bit. No, it's not. It's basically what I've seen over the years is feedback when people feel they're not getting enough of a certain type of nourishment, or it's getting too monotonous. We're having the same thing every day, or there's not enough variety. That's a big one. That's really a big one. If it's hot dogs and sauerkraut every day for a week, you're going to have problems, and people are going to speak up about it. But and it's an opportunity for a cook to show that he or she is genuinely interested and cares about cooking. Because I have a great deal of concern and skepticism about a cook who's saying to me, yeah, I love to cook, I want to learn, I want to be great, and then makes a miserable family meal. Food is food, if you're trying your best to do my menu and cook those dishes, but when it comes to doing family, you just put out anything, that shows something about you. It tells me something about you and your level of caring, which is a big concern. So it's a good way to assess. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you see cooks who really put their heart and soul into it, and they want family to be great, and they love the positive feedback that comes to them from the staff, like, great meal, that was so good, that kind of thing. But thanks, a good question.
Thanks so much for coming.
No, my pleasure.
I've actually had the pleasure of going to a number of your restaurants, which are great, and I know
thank you.
that they all have very different personalities. So I'm wondering a little bit about the difference in the atmosphere and the setup at the family meal between the restaurants. And then I guess the second question is, your staff may move between restaurants. So as they move, have you seen favorite family meal dishes move from restaurant to restaurant?
Yeah, well, so the first question, definitely the way the meal is set up and the way it's served, or the way people eat, is very much in line with the feeling of the restaurant, from very casual, like our barbecue restaurant, Blue Smoke, to one of the restaurants that's included in the list, and there are recipes from it, is 11 Madison Park, which actually is no longer our restaurant. The chef and GM were two incredibly talented guys. Decided they wanted to buy the restaurant from us, and they did. And so they're off on their own doing it. But at the time that we started writing this book, it was part of the family, and that was a little bit more formal, and the meal reflected that, and both the food that was cooked and the way it was presented. You could see the difference. You could definitely see the difference. And for me, it's fun because I can get to go to any of the family meals that I want and sort of get that feeling from each one. Now, for cooks, yes, you're right. Cooks do migrate, I like to call it, from one restaurant to another. If they happen to be the cook that gets on the line and makes family, I'm sure they're going to bring stuff from one to the other, although I don't have concrete examples of that. But and they'll get to see what one family meal is like as opposed to another. And there are differences, I have to say. It's stylistically, and also I keep coming back in my mind to Gramercy Tavern, which seems almost, every day to serve an outstanding variety, and a tremendous amount of care goes into the meal. So, yeah, it's an interesting experience to visit a few of them and see the differences. And thank you all very much for your attention. Appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the books.